I feel like Duet Night Abyss is doing a lot of things differently compared to other high-quality gacha games. For example, what if I told you in this game you could actually craft any weapon, even featured 5-star weapons? Or how about a storyline that's told from a dual perspective? Heck, even the dialogue choices actually matter because they build up your social stats, which then determine your skill checks and unlock new shop items. Or how about the fact there are no random stats for gear items? And did I tell you you can even collect Pokemon-like creatures? Yeah, so this new upcoming gacha game is packed to the brim with just the loveliest features you could ask for. And I have been playing Duet Night Abyss for a while now, thanks to the developers inviting me to the first closed beta test. In fact, they wanted to support me by sponsoring this video, but all they really want to see is feedback for this game from me. Now, I have made a video previously on this game, back when it was in the technical test phase, and aside from the movement and demon wedges, which is like the artifact gearing system, most of the stuff has undergone through a lot of changes, such as the upgraded graphics and animations, which are now sharper and higher quality. Still, in this video, I am going to give my first impressions about the first closed beta test, share my feedback, and show you all the coolest stuff this game has. Okay, so let's start with the plot. At first, when I saw the option to choose the gender of main character, I didn't think much of it, probably just an aesthetic choice. However, after spending 10 hours in the game, I was presented with another main character, a boy. And then I realized, oh, so this game is literally a story of a duet in Night Abyss. Anyway, so I believe in this closed beta test, we can only choose female MC, and then later on we are presented with the male MC storyline. But from what I understand, once the game launches, we can actually choose whichever first way we want to experience the main story, since the point of picking your main character will be to live through the conflict from both sides. For example, the female hero starts off with her childhood companion Barry, who goes missing after a nasty encounter with this lady, and afterwards, we end up in the first major region, Hyperborean Empire. Penniless, distressed, and without shelter, we try to survive by finding odd jobs. On the other hand, once Chapter Twilight kicks off, in this story with the male MC, he is actually part of the Hyperborean Empire army, and he is tasked with capturing the female hero. So yeah, pretty nifty way to tell the story. And if you're thinking of spoiling things, I'm just sharing what I saw from the livestream. Now, the story beats in this Hyperborean Empire region are pretty mature, not gonna lie. There's some nasty racism going on against this race of people called Karens who have horns. And guess who are hating on them? Yep, the humans. I don't think I can even say this in the video because Daddy YouTube might demonetize the video, but a Karen child gets uninstalled by one of the human soldiers. And there's plenty of death and sorrow even in side quests or even main quest. But yeah, I didn't really pay too much attention to the story because I am saving that for when the game launches. And the good news are, there's a skip button for everything, from dialogues to main quests to side quests. Still, I wouldn't advise skipping most of the stuff because, unlike other gacha games, at least that I know of, the majority of dialogue choices usually will have an impact on the impression system. It's like a social stat tracker. There's benefit, morality, wisdom, empathy, and my favorite, chaos. Call someone a mommy, gain chaos stat. Getting beaten up is good for building character, gain chaos. Sucker punch an NPC, chaos. Yeah, I like to play evil characters in RPGs, sue me. Anyway, these impression stats so far provide two benefits. The first one is that you will sometimes need to pass skill checks like in pen and paper RPG games, so you might have to choose between something like morality or benefit check, which actually will use the stats value you've grown and add it to the result. Honestly, at least in the CBT, this was kind of whatever. The skill checks were super easy to pass, with or without having those stats build up. However, if you go to this place called Luno Eggy's Impression Shop, here you can purchase items from each stat category you raised, and all of the stuff is locked behind a certain stat level. And what's even cooler, there's these blueprint tabs which contain unique cosmetics and even growth materials. Safe to say, I cleaned out that chaos tab pretty fast, thanks to my evil choices. And look at this emote I've unlocked. Pretty hilarious, and also a good old reference to D&D mimic chests. Still, I would really like to see a dialogue history tab. Sometimes I skip through the NPC talking, and then I need context to know for my choice. And also, if you do fail a skill check, you can re-roll it, but you gotta have these special dice to do it. I'm not sure yet how you obtain them, but there are also need to buy stuff from the shop, so hopefully we won't get time-gated by this item too much, especially if someone keeps losing their rolls. Okay, moving over to combat and characters. It's pretty slick gameplay. One mouse button attacks in melee range, other shoots with the ranged weapon. You only control one unit, but you can also summon up to 2 companions. However, when doing some game modes, those companions cannot be used. Still, with the 2 AI companions, a lot of stuff can be happening on the screen, and I remember during the technical test, there were definitely some optimization issues and FPS drops. But currently, I haven't really experienced them, at least in the dungeons. Outside of the dungeons, yeah, there are still some issues with the frame rate drops, especially when I'm traveling quickly with the plunge. Speaking of which, there's tons of movement in this game. The most unique one is this helix leap. So you jump, and when you land, quickly slide and jump again. This is a pretty fast way to travel, but there's also dodge, suspended air gliding while shooting, and so on. And as for the characters, each one has a unique skill and ultimate plus 2 passive abilities. However, there are no cooldowns. Instead, there's this sanity point system, which recharges in certain ways. Now, I personally love using Tabitha, who is this little squid girl. She has a really funny role, and her whole shtick is by summoning her tentacles, which can then be empowered with her skill to slam the enemies that they grab onto. I also unlocked Sibyl, who seems to be the main antagonist at the start of the story, so hopefully this means the devs have no problem adding villains as playable units. But yeah, she's pretty wacky. She'll slap enemies with her Thunder Whip, and when she deploys a big Electro Ball, by slapping it constantly, you can overcharge it and deal big damage to mobs. Then there's this little dude Yale with his friend Oliver. He floats in the air and drops colorful bombs on enemies, which is pretty unique. And then there were also some vanilla units like Rebecca, who can summon up to 3 jellyfishes to deal damage, and then depending how much of this special stack enemies gain from her attacks, her ultimate deals better damage. I didn't get to play with Psyche, who is the featured unit in this closed beta test, but she seems to be able to fly around like a butterfly, which is pretty cool. Still, one thing I like about combat are the melee weapons. So let's say for example, you obtain a super cool sight. Anyone can use it, and the weapon has special moveset. In fact, every weapon has a different moveset. For example, the katana has this extremely satisfying attack sequence, and it even deals better damage depending on what combo level you achieved. Oh yeah, the combo level goes up the more you fight, and it can then be consumed by any melee weapon to deal better damage with a charge attack. And yeah, there's a bunch of ranged weapons like rifles, pistols, rocket launchers, and so on. What's even better, you can customize the color palette of any weapon. You will need to forge the dye color and consume it, and I wish this wasn't the case, although I haven't tried out. I hope this means you just need to unlock the color once and not consume the actual color for one-time use on a weapon. Because, as you can see, I can design some atrocious looking weapons with my color blindness, which I'll regret seconds later. Still, you can even customize your own units, give them eye patches, make them go blindfolded, equip little trinkets. I mean, it's really cool. But yeah, to obtain most of the stuff in the game, you will need to use the forging system. It seems just like in the technical test, the devs are still sticking with the timer system, which can be sped up with special items, so I don't know. This might not matter if the waiting duration is like a day or 2 for really epic items. However, during the livestream, it has been confirmed that you can craft any weapon in the game, including 5-star weapons from the standard banner and even limited 5-star weapons from the featured banners. Although, not many details were shared. Still, I did notice I can craft one of the 5-star weapons in this beta test, but I had to acquire materials from this Nocturnal Echoes mode. You pick a boss and you can challenge it up to 50 times per week for a chance to gain some of the crafting materials for the 5-star weapon plus other goodies. Speaking of which, a quick rundown of game modes. Besides main story, there's Avian Spirit Trials, which can be challenged from each new teleport point you unlock, and there's also a pretty decent roguelike mode, Maze of Missteps, and I already managed to finish a couple of runs with some wacky builds. And then, of course, just like in every gacha game, we've got the stamina system and the domains, or as they're called here, the commissions. Now, I will say this, these material gathering instances are pretty different from the usual because, first of all, they take a lot more time to complete, but you can encounter random events inside. Like, there's a loot goblin you can chase around. Well, she's not a goblin, but you'd get the reference if you played old school ARPGs. But then you can even find randomly trapped Genimons that need to be rescued. And Genimons are like Pokemon. You can tame them with food, and better food, better chance to catch them, and when they're caught, you can equip them and the main character can summon it via a hotkey. There are some strong effects that these mods offer, so as the saying goes, gotta catch them all. Still, the biggest progression system besides forging weapons is going to be the Demon Wedge system. I talked about it quite extensively in my previous video, but long story short, these gear items are like artifacts, except the stats are not randomized. Sure, you will need to be lucky and farm for the desired demon wedges, but once you get them, it's not randomized. In fact, you can even share the same demon wedge types, so all character demon wedges can be shared between all characters. Same goes for melee and then ranged weapons. You cannot share there's something like a weapons demon wedge with a character, but that's to be expected anyway. Still, there's even a loadout system already present in the game. You can choose A, B, and C loadouts, which is pretty huge in my opinion. Now, there is some finicky stuff going on with the demon wedges, like there's a tolerance system which limits the amount and quality of wedges you can equip, which can be raised or even optimized via these tracks, but I won't delve too much right now. However, I will say this, the demon wedges aren't just your typical boring attack, defense, HP, crit stats, and so on. Sure, some of them do provide just stat boosts, but for example, a character with a certain demon wedge can start dealing damage when they perform a helix leap, or by improving the skill's area size, this makes Rebecca's jellyfish have a larger range. And since every weapon and character can have their own demon wedges loadout, they can be completely transformed with certain demon wedges. Like a pretty slow grenade launcher can now spam fast attacks thanks to demon wedges with ranged weapon attack speed increase. Still, this is a gacha game, and while I didn't get to make too many pulls, I did notice some interesting things about the banners. First of all, there's the beginner banner where you can do 10 pulls for only cost of 8 for up to 50 pulls, which also guarantees a 5-star, pretty standard stuff these days. However, when it came to the featured banner, it actually has 2 tabs, one of which is quite regular. There's a pity of 90 and then a 50-50 chance to get the featured unit, but if you fail, then the next time it will be that featured unit, so like, whatever. But the other tab called Destined Chrono actually guarantees that within 90 pulls, you will 100% get the featured unit. However, this tab then disappears after obtaining it. So knowing this, I imagine it will be easier to plan your pulls, which is nice. And then as for featured weapon banner, it's 80 pulls pity, and I believe it's guaranteed to be the featured weapon. So compared to other 5-star banners in other games, yeah, it's better. However, I am keen to learn how will the forging system allow us to craft these featured weapons. But yeah, overall, this game is definitely on my radar. I've been having a blast playing it, like literally blasting enemies away and watching their funny ragdoll physics. It has a lot of unique selling points that are either underutilized or not even present in the current gacha market. So I'll be following this game's development very closely, and I highly recommend for you to do this as well. You can pre-register to Duet Night Abyss by using my link in the description, which will help you stay up to date with the news, and if there's another beta test, you'll be the first one to know about it. Most important of all, by using this link, you also help support my channel. Anyway, hope you found this video interesting, and as always, I'd really appreciate it if you could press the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks, and see you next time.